second Disney live-action remake of the year, Lilo and Stitch, has dropped in theaters, and it is doing fantastic at the box office. So today it's time for a Disney live-action tier list. If you're interested in making your own tier list, I'll have a link down below in the description to my template. If you create one, take a screenshot of it and post it on your social media, your Instagram stories, Twitter, and tag me. Then I will share some of your tier list. One quick announcement before we get started. This upcoming weekend, May 30th and 31st, I will be at Fan Expo Dallas. I have two different panels that will be on Friday, May 30th. One of them will be on How to Grow a Nerdy YouTube channel. The other one will be a live recording for my main channel here on Hot Takes. I'd love to meet you. If you see me, feel totally fine approaching me. I love to meet fans at conventions and things like that. And let's get started. We're kicking things off way back in 1994 with Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book. This is a movie that I actually did see in the theater when it first came out because I want to go see lots of these cool, fun adventure films. Now, when you watch this movie today, it feels pretty quaint compared to what Disney live action films have turned into as these massive, slick $200 million blockbusters. And this was a mid-budget, now over 30-year-old throwback adventure. And for that reason, I like it. We're going to throw this one right into the good category. Right off the bat, it has a fun cast with Lena Headey in there, Sam Neill, Cary Elwes, and the Jason Scott Lee in the lead. And so just the whole thing, the cast is charming. It's just like an old-fashioned adventure with animals, swordplay, traps, all the kind of stuff that you want. The story's a little bit of a blend of Jungle Book with Tarzan plus a pinch of Aladdin thrown in there. And so, for me, this is the sort of movie I wish Disney made more of. Movies that aren't trying to be the biggest film of the year, but just like a solid, mid-tier, fun adventure. A couple years later, we get 101 Dalmatians. I'll cut right to the chase. This is another one that is good. And once again, it's a scope and size of live-action film that Disney just doesn't make as often anymore, where it's just kind of meant to be a cute little family adventure with dogs. Because it is in live action, it puts the emphasis more on the human characters, so you're getting the same plot but kind of a different perspective on the same events in translating it into a different format in a way that kind of makes sense. The script was written by John Hughes, and so you kind of get that John Hughes flavor to it, in particular as you move into the third act. And as my son used to say when we would watch it, you move into the third act, and then Liam yelled out, "This is where it turns into Home Alone with dogs." Well, John Hughes wrote Home Alone, John Hughes wrote this, and yep, that makes a lot of sense.
Yes! Yes, 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 yes.
And it's a movie that's unashamedly a little bit campy and leans into that in a way that just makes it a lot of fun. It's not trying to be the biggest, the craziest, anything like that. It's just a fun family film. 4 years later, we get a sequel, 102 Dalmatians, and once again, we will cut right to the chase. I'm going to throw this one down in D for disaster, that I think this is a totally ill-conceived sequel to 101 Dalmatians that I think almost kind of like fundamentally misunderstands the appeal of the original film, either one of the original films, where it's like they thought all people cared about was Cruella, because Glenn Close's Cruella is so much fun, so we'll just put that front and center. We're going to abandon the other main cast of it and do this whole other story, and it just loses all the charm in order to make Cruella even more cruel or cringe or whatever you want to call it. The basic setup has Cruella going through psychotherapy to try and fix her and change her relationship to dogs or something like that.
Wow, that was weird.
Which feels like a plot point pulled out of A Clockwork Orange, which kids won't understand, and it's like really weird to put in a movie that is as juvenile as this. And so just like a movie that I just don't think works on any level. It's just such a forced, contrived way to try and do a sequel that it ends up just being incredibly lame, which is unfortunate because I actually got to interview the director of this film just a month or so back. It's the same guy that directed a Goofy movie, so I interviewed him for the 30th anniversary of a Goofy movie coming out in the documentary, Not Just a Goof. And I had literally watched this movie the night before and was like, talking to him about it a little bit, but also didn't want to talk with him about it because I didn't have anything nice to say. Pretty much every other movie that he's done, I really enjoy, except for this one. Jumping forward 10 years, we have Tim Burton's Alice in Wonderland. This is another one where I'm not really sure where things went wrong because on paper, the visuals of a Tim Burton should line up with the insanity of Lewis Carroll really nicely. In execution, through the blockbuster machine, I don't think it really worked at all. We're going in the C category, totally misguided. And some of it, if you just start to actually play out the way this would work, but, you know, classic, iconic lines from Alice in Wonderland, like, off with their heads, when you run that through the dark and macabre sensibilities of Tim Burton, you get a little bit more literal than maybe you would want to go, and you go, okay, I can see where maybe this would go off the rails and get a little bit too dark, and maybe we'll have people jumping on severed heads to cross a body of water at some point in time.
Because that's what heroes do.
But really, beyond that, like, it's a movie that I feel like on the script level, it's not even kind of the Tim Burton level, on the script level, it just is way too mainstream and normal for Lewis Carroll, where the whole point was the wordplay, the whimsical nature, the weirdness, the randomness. It's like all of these other things, but they wanted to make a big tentpole blockbuster, so they mashed it into the blockbuster template and lost everything kind of distinct about Lewis Carroll and tried to just make up for it with weird Tim Burton graphics. And there's like too many places where everything is filtered through the Tim Burton worldview. So all of a sudden the Mad Hatter, of course played by Johnny Depp, is a Tim Burton lonely weirdo who has PTSD from tyranny. And you're like, wait, what? How? That's not the Mad Hatter. What are we doing here? And Alice is the chosen one, and we are like, the final battle is, well, there is a final battle just right there. You're like, what final battle? And chosen one battling a knight, and as it just kind of completely loses everything. And normally since I don't know how to read, I haven't read that many books, but I actually did read Lewis Carroll growing up. So this is one of those ones where it's like, what happened? How did we go so wrong? Later that year, we got The Sorcerer's Apprentice, which I guess kind of qualifies to be on this list. It is barely a remake of something. They took one small little segment out of Fantasia about Mickey is this sorcerer's apprentice that makes brooms come to life and fills a room with water and trying to clean it up, and turned that into this big old movie. So for that reason, I'm going to throw this one in the slick, but why category. There's plenty here to put a smile on your face. It's a reteaming of Nicolas Cage with John Turteltaub, the director of the National Treasure movie, so like riding the wave of their success of those films. They do a wizard movie. So right there's a fun that kind of comes along with them doing a big production. There's wizard magic with a budget. Once again, fun to look at, entertaining to look at. But it's all so convoluted from beginning to end, where it just feels a little like it's never as entertaining as like I feel it should be in light of all the ingredients that they have. It's the kind of movie that feels like it just got passed around from screenwriter to screenwriter. And so the lore of it kind of has like 3 beginnings before the movie actually kicks into gear, because it has to set up all these characters. And like, there must have been a much more straightforward way to kick off this movie. It's just kind of like a movie that feels like overproduced in the blockbuster machine. It's not bad. It's totally watchable. There's plenty of bits in here like that was fun, but it's also the kind of thing where you go, right, if you try to take this silent, like literally a short, it's one segment out of Fantasia and turn it into a movie and pass it around from too many people that all want to add their little bit into it. It just feels like that sort of overdone blockbuster.
You don't like it?
Jumping forward 4 years, we get Maleficent, and this, I guess, is one of their first major reimagining remakes. Of course, this time we are telling the story of Sleeping Beauty from the perspective of Maleficent, and reframing the story where Maleficent is a bit of a victim in the tale, and thus much more sympathetic and heroic in her own ways.
Is it true? Are you Maleficent?
Angelina Jolie is perfectly cast in there. She can, of course, look the part, but she can balance the being good, evil, mischievous, charming. Like, she has the chops and just the movie star charisma to pretty easily be able to pull all of that off in kind of telling its, let's reframe the story, take on Sleeping Beauty. Does some nice jobs of just playing out the way different people respond to hurt, the way that grief can lead us to vengeance and make us the worst version of ourselves, and how you can turn from your ways, or what if you could be consumed by your vengeance, and all the different ways it can deteriorate.
I shall bestow a gift on the child.
And all, like, it plays out how certain emotions can be so detrimental to us. There is a side to it where I kind of go, but do we like this started the trend. Like, if it had just been this movie, maybe I'd have a different perspective on it, but this started the trend of, like, let's take all of our villains and show how maybe they were misunderstood. We kind of kept going back to this a few too many times, and few too many of Disney's villains over the last decade have been sympathetic in a way that it's like, come on, like, just let a bad guy be bad. Maleficent's supposed to be one of the great villains, and now she's not anymore. But all of that said, this is a pretty good movie. It's a pretty fun adventure. We are throwing this one in the good category. The next year, we get Cinderella. I'll cut right to the chase. This one's going in the top tier, where the source material lent itself really nicely for an elegant romance. And they got the right person to do it with Kenneth Branagh, who comes from this history of productions of Shakespeare. He did Thor. He knows how to kind of capture this grand sense of royalty and bring it to his stories. And he does that with this romance underdog story. And they find all the right little details to flesh out certain characters, add a few subplots in here to just add a little bit more depth to it without taking away from what matters the most or making it weird or confusing, anything like that. And so just a good example of a story that lent itself well to being converted over, done by a director that could bring some gravitas to it. 1 year later, we got Jon Favreau's The Jungle Book. Once again, let's get to it. This one is also going in the top tier. We had back-to-back winners coming out of the Disney live-action remakes, and maybe that's perhaps why they spiraled out of control with way too many of them shortly afterwards. But part of what works with this movie is that the original Jungle Book was kind of this episodic little tale of these little adventures Mowgli had, and this version is able to reimagine it and give it a little bit more of a through line, a little bit more of a goal that we're working through, and telling it as this kind of technological masterpiece that it was so far ahead of its time in what it was doing with photorealistic CGI on a level that was just kind of unprecedented, that it's just a tremendous achievement to watch it and realize the only real thing in here is the kid. It's just, you can marvel at it, and it's a simple enough story that you're able to just kind of get sucked into this world and enjoy the set pieces, the action, the little bits. It's filled with all classic Jungle Book moments, but reimagined into a new format. So once again, an example of a story that lent itself to not just being converted, but adapted and improved upon in this format while being something that is just, technically speaking, tremendous. And it's a fun experience.
That's great!
But just 1 month later, we got Alice Through the Looking Glass, and it is on the other end for me. This one is a D for disaster, an utterly joyless slog that's relentlessly melancholy while trying to be quirky. The entire thing just feels like this professional misfire, that they were trying to turn Alice in Wonderland into something it was never meant to be. We want to turn Alice into this time travel epic tale that's meant to be a billion-dollar blockbuster like the first film, but they never stopped to ask, is Lewis Carroll compatible with that template? So from the very beginning, everything about it feels off. Alice is the captain of a ship in the Royal Navy battling pirates. And you're like, what? What are we doing here? The Mad Hatter is either depressed or being talked down to by his dad.
Why?
The whole movie, instead of being insane, crazy, random, energetic, no, he's so tired and sad all of the time. And like Lewis Carroll is a writer known for his literary nonsense. And this movie feels dead set on explaining everything. The opposite of nonsense. So why is Mad Hatter the way that he is? Because of his dad issues. Why did the Queens not get along? Because of a misunderstanding in their childhood that led one of them to like to cut off heads. And if only her sister had been a better sister when they were young, we could have avoided all of those dead people. like it's all of this stuff that's way too logical and borrowing from other formats to try and bring emotion to it that just doesn't belong in an adaptation of Lewis Carroll. And when so much of it is just dwelling on childhood trauma and daddy issues, and the world is ending because time is collapsing in on every single one of us, it's just unpleasant to try to get there. But then that same year, we got Pete's Dragon, and once again, we're swinging in the other direction. This one is on the higher end of good, borderline into the top tier, but not quite there because it's not as rewatchable and memorable to me. But this is like a really sweet story about a boy and his dog. Another one that you can question, should it be included on this list? In fact, the Wikipedia article that I'm using for most of this list does not include this movie. I just would prefer to talk about more movies than less. It is a remake. Pete is animated in the original version. This is a total reimagining. It's not remotely the same story as the Pete's Dragon that I grew up with.
Wow, that's great. You're the most wonderful dragon in the whole world.
But it also is in most ways a better film. Like it's a movie that like leans into like the beauty and the majesty of the creature in a way that so often creature movies don't do that. Like they don't let us be like, wow, a dragon can be like really cool if that exists. And what would that look like out in nature having fun? It has a very good natured tone to it. It's all about building relationships and just through simple actions rather than being driven by dialogue. It has conflict and an antagonist without needing to make him a villain. Like Carl Urban is frustrating because he's working against what we're going for. He has very obvious flaws with his arrogance and things like that. But also, he's actually a decent person. Like we don't need to make him an evil jerk for him to be a thorn in the side of our characters in the plot. It has other qualities that are making this happen, and he sees a dragon, he goes, a dragon is dangerous. Of course we should stop that thing. It makes sense. So it's like a real solid, or excuse me, the end of the movie also finds a way to have like just the right feel-good conclusion that puts a big smile on your face, ends on just the right note, without ever needing to dip into anything dark. Like it's just this wholesome, non-cynical film. Moving into 2017, Beauty and the Beast, and this is the first of these movies that I saw and watched for my channel and reviewed it when it first came out. I actually have a lot of fondness for this movie in a certain regard because I took Chloe to go see it when she would have been 3 years old, and she put on her belle dress. I should have dressed up too myself, but I didn't. We put her in her belle dress. We went to go see the movie opening night, and so just like a really fond memory for me. But really, to me, that's like the whole purpose of this movie. It's just kind of a nostalgia event for parents, in which case I'll put it in the slick but why category. That it's, in many regards, very faithful and thus kind of pointless. And in many other ways, it's too different, in which case, thus missing the point. In the case of Beauty and the Beast, the original version, which was 84 minutes long, 84 minutes long, was nominated for Best Picture.
It was perfect. Perfect. Everything, down to the last minute details.
The first animated film ever nominated for Best Picture, so in its original format, highly celebrated. And in this version, it's 129 minutes long. It's 45 minutes longer. It's 50% more movie than the version that was nominated for Best Picture. And some of that, when you're converting to live action and action set piece, you might make a little bit longer, change a little dialogue. You want to do something a little fresh and new, so you add a song in here. But when you're talking about 50% longer, you're starting to do a little bit too much, probably. And in the case of this movie, they add in new stuff where they hop and go visit the Black Plague, and they mirror magic has this whole other level that doesn't tie into the plot really. They add the Black Plague into the movie, and it's like, well, you know what no one ever thought while watching Beauty and the Beast? I wish this just had a little bit more Black Plague in it. But nobody thought that. And so
I made a decision, and it was wrong. It was a bad call, Ripley. It was a bad call.
A movie that it's slick. It's well done, besides way too much auto-tune on the vocals. But there's also just this general sense of why, outside of the nostalgia novelty of a parent taking their child to go see it, you're always just going to pick to rewatch the animated film over this bloated over long remake. Then in 2018, we got Christopher Robin, a new adaptation of Winnie the Pooh, this time with a grown-up Christopher Robin played by Ewan McGregor. And, generally speaking, it's like a good, sweet, new version of Winnie the Pooh in a new format, so we'll put it in the good category. I'm not one that's ever been like some people absolutely adore this film, and I bet if you're a big Winnie the Pooh person, you probably get a little bit more out of it than I do. For me, I think maybe it's a little bit too long, a little bit too slow. Like, it has the same pacing as classic Winnie the Pooh animated pieces, but when you put it into like live action and you make it an hour and 49 minutes, you can feel the pacing a little bit more. But, at the end of the day, also, it captures the hijinks, the wordplay, the cleverness, that general sentimentality and emotion that's kind of brought by Winnie the Pooh. It captures it and brings it into this new format that is something fresh and new. And once again, kind of like what I said about Pete's Dragon, there's like a lack of cynicism to it that's just very refreshing. That'll bring us to 2019, where they put out 5 different Disney live action remakes. First of which was Dumbo, and to me, this was the weakest of their output that year. I'm going to put this one in the totally misguided category. Now, I can appreciate that the film is designed to be a remake, reimagining, and sequel all in one, but that doesn't mean that it works for me. Part of the problem here is the original Dumbo is quite literally just 1 hour long. Like, it's not an hour and 20 minutes, not an hour and 30 minutes, not an hour and 15 minutes. It's just 1 hour long. It is a short film. And because they're trying to do these big blockbusters, now Dumbo is 2 hours long. So the story kind of continues afterwards in the back half of it. And it just kind of, once again, you're taking a classic that does not convert in directly or meaningfully over, and so you're changing a classic into this whole other thing, and something gets lost along the way. It's also a movie that, to me, it looks entirely phony. There's just like this over-processed look to the entire movie. The nature of the characters, the drama, it all feels forced. There's just a phoniness to kind of everything around it. Some of that is the script where the plot beats repeat themselves. There's a bunch of adult characters that are just so frustrating and insufferable and not listening to any wisdom. It's just like a movie that I just have never enjoyed it, and even rewatches, it never clicks with me. There's also something mildly amusing about the lack of self-awareness in the plot of this movie, where Michael Keaton's character is the villain of sorts who has this powerful company who looks to acquire other amusement parks that he thinks will complement his brand. He promises not to mess with them at all, and then he acquires them, changes them to match what he's doing, which is literally what Disney did from 2005 until 2020. They just kept acquiring brands that they thought would complement them. And at the peak of that, as they're doing the Fox acquisition, they put out a movie that presents that as the villain. There's just something very amusing about that. 2 months later, we have Aladdin. Cut into the chase. This is going into the top tier for me. I think that this is one of the most enjoyable of the Disney live action remakes. And at the core of that, I just think Aladdin itself lends itself really well to live action. We start off with a parkour chase. We're flying out on a magic carpet. We got some swords play. All of it is the sort of thing that makes for a fun live action adventure. And it's the sort of thing that lends itself to kind of spectacle and throwing a budget at it to add some extra flair. As a remake, the original has so much of the flavor of Robin Williams in it because the genie, of course, is him just riffing and improvising. And because we're bringing in someone like Will Smith, who is just as charismatic and can be just as funny, but in a totally different way. Like, they bring such different energies to it that itself brings things to life in its own way. It gives it a distinct flavor to it. So for me, this is one of the examples of if you find a movie that lends itself well to being adapted, you can get something really, really entertaining out of it. And I just think that this movie slaps.
Oh, wow! He's kidding. I can't say things.
It was a bad joke.
Also, I have a special fondness for Aladdin because my karaoke song of choice is A Whole New World.
No one can tell us no, and where to go or say we're on the dream.
That's a lovely, lovely voice.
Then 2 months later, we get The Lion King. And this is probably the ultimate example of slick, but why? Where, once again, Jon Favreau used the Jungle Book photorealistic CGI technique, so this is not a live action movie, but whatever, applies it to The Lion King, and you get a movie that is just absolutely a technological wonder. Just jaw-dropping photorealistic CGI from start to finish. But it just inherently also has this sort of like, yeah, but why are we doing this? Photorealistic CGI animals do not emote. It worked with the Jungle Book because we had a human character and the emotion wasn't being driven by the animals. And it was just more of this action adventure. With this movie, I just can't wait to be king, this joyous song. It kind of loses a little bit of something when we have non-emoting animals. And so it's like this very strange cover song of a movie that is just almost beat for beat the entire thing. It is a technological wonder. There's so much talent on display. It's worth watching once just to see the novelty of this thing. But if you're ever in the mood to watch like when I first watched it, it was in IMAX and it was like, wow. But at home, there's just no motivation for me to rewatch this one versus the other one. 3 months later, we got Maleficent, Mistress of Evil. And this is a frustrating one because it's like they almost found the right plot. Like, it's a little, in my mind, pretty difficult to do a sequel to Maleficent because the whole hook of that was that we're flipping Sleeping Beauty on its head. It's not really set up to be the foundation for a franchise with a sequel because you just lose immediately the hook, the gimmick, the whole reason that the thing exists if we're now doing something totally different. And they found a plot that in and of itself, it has the right ingredients for an interesting battle between kingdoms with just enough earned drama and conflict to drive things forward with, weddings, duels, kingdoms, all that stuff. Game of Thrones for kids.
It's a bold strategy, Cotton. Let's see if it pays off for them.
But in the execution, and perhaps somewhat because of the Maleficent problem that this is not meant to build a franchise, you get problems pretty quickly where your Maleficent feels like a side character in her own movie. She's inconsequential to most of the plot, where everything's happening without her. She's just reacting to what happens in front of her. Her choices don't drive the plot forward. It's not, she has very little agency in the film, and even less that matters for the story. There's not really a lead character that has a character arc that you care about and everything. And because we are doing Game of Thrones for kids, there's an awfully large body count for a children's movie. And so it's the kind of movie that just like, you can see why they made it because the first one made so much money, but it also lacks anything that really pulls it together. I've been going back and forth on where to put this one because I just don't have any desire to really ever rewatch it. I'm going to go on the top end of Totally Misguided. We didn't need a sequel, and Game of Thrones for kids is actually not a great idea. And then 1 month later, we got Lady and the Tramp. I believe this was a Disney Plus original in one of the kickoff movies for Disney Plus. Cut right to the chase. Slick, but why? Every time I have to rewatch this one, like I just don't have much interest. It's not poorly done. I don't have any specific criticisms of it. It's like, okay, it's like, yeah, dog's going on a date. Oh man, they sure are mean to him. Okay, oh, what a happy ending. Like it's just a dull movie to me. That, you know, the original Lady and the Tramp is not like one of the flashiest, most interesting Disney animated films, and then making it live action. I got two girls that love talking dog movies, so, you know, they have fun with dogs going on dates and stuff like that. But, you know, for me, it's just like, okay, it's well made, but why? Moving right along to 2020, COVID year with Mulan. And, you know, I didn't really grow up watching Mulan. It came out when I was in high school, so I don't even think I saw it when it first released. But I also do like big martial arts epics too. So a Disney live action martial arts epic has a lot of things that are right up my alley. Kind of in that mix, they got Jason Scott Lee in there as one of the villains. It's just nice to see him back, even reflecting back to the original one of these where he starred as Mowgli in Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book, and then he was at the time in the Bruce Lee story, Dragon the Bruce Lee story, a movie I grew up watching. So seeing him in a martial arts movie again put a big grin on my face. When it first came out, like not a lot of movies were coming out, so I was like super pumped just to have a new movie, and it had martial arts in it. After watching some other people's reviews of it and stuff like that, they put ideas in my head that I hadn't caught when I watched it, but I could not shake from my head about the weird choices that they made with Mulan's character. It's no longer hard work and dedication makes her succeed. It's just that she has the chi or whatever, that she's just born with it. She's the chosen one. It's like, oh, that's not a very good message. Kind of took a movie that I was really high on and it's like, oh. This is an unforced error. Why did you take something that worked, that was like the whole like heart of the original one of her dedication, and turn it into this other thing? Like, what are you thinking? And so for me, I can't say that I don't like the martial arts and there's a lot of gorgeous imagery. So it's a slick, but why did you do this to your movie? The next year we got Cruella. And this is the Maleficentification of Cruella de Vil. And it's a very frustrating movie for me because on an artistic level, we're talking about a movie with its own distinct style and voice and flavor. It oozes all of that. Of course, Emma Stone is just great in the lead. I'm Cruella. But all of it is done to tell a story that I just don't think you can possibly convince me that we need to present the most famous puppy killer in history as a misunderstood punk rock feminist icon. like this is just like, this is the wrong direction to go. Like, this is the wrong character. It doesn't work. You can't take the puppy killer. The puppy killer is great because she's the puppy killer. She's the flamboyant, fun lady that is very flippant about, let's steal all the puppies and kill them to make coats. And that is not good source material for someone that we're rooting for as an icon of a movement, or like punk rock, yeah, fighting the man, yeah, kill the puppies, yeah. Oh wait, one of those wasn't quite right.
You've made a huge mistake.
One of those we went a little bit off there and went in the wrong direction. It's just like a movie I just can't get behind it, and every time I rewatch it, it's also a movie that just feels way too long. That they were trying to cover so much of her life, or to have so much story, and then we're getting her childhood, and then it's like all this stuff with her mother and father, and her job, her rise of her career, and the turn. It's so much plot. In the middle of it, it gets so cyclical, where it just kind of repeats all these same movements of like almost like heist sequences, and then all of her antics, and it's so long and repetitive. So it's frustrating because, like, on the one hand, there's a lot of artistic merit here. There's so much here that's like, yes, bring this energy, this creativity, bring this life to the other movies that actually make more sense as movies to be made. Don't do it with this movie that does not make any sense to be, like, why did you put so much life into such a bad idea? And then later that year, we got Pinocchio, which is one of the most shockingly soulless films ever made. We are going straight to D for disaster on this one. And this is like a crazy example of, I don't understand how this much talent could make something so bad. Where when you go through the director, Robert Zemeckis, the writer, the star, Tom Hanks, there's a lot of Oscars and Oscar nominations in here. And they put out this movie that is just corporate slop. It, to the extent that we have a sequence in the Geppetto's shop where there's a series of clocks featuring Pixar and Disney icons. As if he's a time traveler from the future, or we just decided to promote our own movies in the middle. Like, why would Robert Zemeckis do this? It's this sort of, like, I just don't understand how any of them allowed this to happen, wanted this to happen. It just turns into just this horrible, like, absolutely dead on the inside product, where one of the most iconic and classic animated films of all time is converted into content to fill a streaming service by Oscar winners.
Don't ask questions. Just consume product and then get excited for next products.
And it takes, once again, a classic and tries to remove all the rough edges. It takes off the edge, and in the process, it like loses the message of the movie. You get to the end of it, and it's even confusing what it's even implying. Just everything about it is a total misfire.
Life is precious, life is short, and the idiots who made this film are taking 2 hours of my life and robbing it from me.
Not just a misfire, an embarrassing misfire for everyone involved.
Yeah, buddy, I gotta say, that's probably the worst thing I've ever heard.
Then the next year we get Peter and Wendy, and Peter Pan would be an example of an animated film that I think pretty obviously would lend itself well to live action, as it has been made live action many times before. And it's a swashbuckling adventure with flying and pirate ships. Great material to make a live action film on all fronts. And somehow they turned it into just content. Somehow they botched it again. And it's coming from the guy that did Pete's Dragon. So even someone that was able to bring like such a heart to Pete's Dragon, and Peter and Wendy completely misses the mark.
To grow up might just be the biggest adventure of all.
Some of it, I don't like getting too much into the weird agenda stuff, but it's hard to not be like, I think Disney had a weird agenda on this one, where Peter Pan suddenly is Peter Pan and Wendy's role that is pretty distinct in the original book and the original animated film. There's a specific dynamic to her that's very intentional in its relation to her brothers, as well as Peter and the Lost Boys. It's like built into the whole story. but it's an old-fashioned role for her to play. And so now she needs to like step charge, be more assertive in a different sense and get in on the action. It's like, this is what people have been saying you've been doing, but it seems like you're overtly doing that with this film. And then the other problem of like Disney's obsession the last 10 years with sympathetic villains. So now we have to like give a backstory for Captain Hook and why he is the way that he is. And like, there's a little bit of a sympathetic factor there that we just can't have the mischievous playfulness of what it's always been. And suddenly there's this whole other level added into, you're like, stop. But most importantly, they took this very lively, fun adventure and made this lifeless film with very dull colors. So yeah, for me, it's not a total disaster. It's just totally misguided. Then the next month, we got The Little Mermaid. And leading up to this movie's release, the internet put all of its targets on this movie and went absolutely insane. Hey, I thought it was good. That besides a few missteps here, a song choice from Awkwafina that was ill-advised, I thought that this was a good live-action remake that captured the charm of the original. And so much of the controversy surrounding the film boiled entirely down to they race-swapped Ariel. Ariel, very famously, pale red hair. It's a famous, iconic look, and they race-swapped it. And, you know, all things equal, I absolutely do not think they should have done that because Ariel is a very iconic, distinct look, and you change something that the character is very much associated with. I wouldn't have done that. How far other people went with that outrage, like, I get very weird behavior to state the obvious. But at the end of the day, the actress herself did a great job. Like, her performance absolutely captured this naive, wide-eyed enthusiasm for discovering this other world that she doesn't know. Like, she absolutely captured that energy, and of course, she is able to sing really, really, really well. And kind of when it gets into the romance, a lot of that stuff, like, it had the spark, it had the magic to it. So for me, this was a movie that I understand, like, there's a starting point with some of the frustration of the, like, that I do get. But also I think people on the internet blow things way out of the proportion, and some of them are like, why do a bunch of 40-year-old men care all this? Other people might, like, I'm just like, Little Mermaid was not my favorite of the Renaissance growing up because I had Aladdin and Lion King. They're the ones that were made a little bit more for me. And so I just don't even understand why some people cared so much. And she did a good job. So I thought it was good. You know, the Scuttlebutt song, What Are We Doing?
This is so painful to watch.
Some of the visual effects look not great, in particular, given the budget. Did it have the magic and the charm? I think it did. Real quick, before I look at the last three on this list, remember, you can make your own using that template down below in the description. If you do a screenshot of it, share it on Twitter or your Instagram stories and tag me. I will share some of your rankings. Also, remember, if you're in Texas or anywhere on planet Earth, really, travel to Dallas this Friday and Saturday. I will be at Fan Expo Dallas leading 2 panels on May 30th. Information will be down below, and I'll keep making community tab posts with as much information as I can give you about where you can stop me. If you see me there, feel free to stop me, say hello, all of that fun stuff. Then we have Mufasa, the Lion King from last December. And when the Lion King made like $1.6 billion, became the highest grossing animated film of all time, which makes it funny that it's included in this Disney live action remake list. Naturally, Disney wanted to a little bit more of that money and decided to do a prequel about the life of Mufasa, or the origin story of Mufasa. And if you're going to go somewhere with that story, you know, Mufasa is this very compelling character that he just has such a presence and such reverence and respect. You go, all right, what's the backstory here? What's the backstory with Scar? And when it comes to the movie itself, it is such a mixed bag of good and bad. So I'll throw this in the slick but why. Very low end of the slick but why of They improved the emoting of the lion, so it's a little bit better. When it's about Mufasa's origin, I think it's able to kind of tap into the magic a little bit and kind of show this person rising and earning the respect of the people around them with the choices that he makes along the way. The mechanism for showing Scar's turn, I think, was just like, it's like they started down one path that made sense to me of the person that believes in birthright leadership and the person that believes in earned leadership. The person, though, you've got Scar that by birthright should be leading, and then you have Mufasa, who's the person that people actually follow. And so you can see the tension building throughout that. And then ultimately, the mechanism of Scar turning into a sociopath, a murderous sociopath, is that his high school crush chooses his friend. Like high school crush level of dating issues here. This is not anything beyond that. And they use that as the mechanism, and it's like, no, I do not believe you. This is like you to turn from best friends to that over that small of a slight. The girl that he never really won, the girl that was never really his, went with the guy that clearly knew more about her and connected with it. Like, what do you talk? Like, this is ridiculous. You are now cheapening the Scar character, and you've already kind of done that by breaking the relationship between the two characters. So, I know this is another one that's like right on that edge between slick but why and totally misguided. Of there's enough in here that is like, all right, it tapped into enough. There's enough in here, but also like, why did you, like, of all the things that you could do to have these two fall away from each other, why this? Why? Like, there's just better options. That'll bring us to this year and Snow White. Woo! The movie with a bazillion bad headlines and PR nightmares over the last 2 years of Peter Dinklage calling them out before they even make the film, to, hey, we're going to do this. And they release set photos and like, what on earth are these? What is this? To Rachel Zegler making some very ill-advised statements about her own film. Weird. And the source material and the male lead in the film that are just like, you know, maybe you don't need to say every thought that you have, leading to a delay of a year to do massive reshoots, and maybe they reshot the movie 2 times. And it's the kind of movie where the headline is all the bad press and like $250 million budget. And you're like, $250 million for Snow White? Are you insane? What are you doing? And then you watch the movie and it's not a total disaster, but it is totally misguided. It's an example of kind of most of Disney's worst tendencies, which is we're just adapting, we're just going back and doing stuff regardless of whether it makes sense or not. So we're going to take Snow White, that is a very primitive film, because it's the first animated feature-length film of all time, so it's very primitive in its storytelling, and we're going to try and turn it into a $250 million blockbuster. That's right there probably not a great idea. And we're going to kind of reimagine it, but also be really faithful on random details like Snow White's look and her haircut cut, so she looks like Lord Farquaad. Like, it's just like choices that are really odd, and picking the perfectly wrong balance of reimagining and faithfulness at the same time. And leading it once again into weird tendencies of strange messaging where like Snow White, instead of being like a, simple fairy tale love story with her 7 dwarves, all of a sudden she's the chosen one that's going to fight back tyranny and free the kingdom. And we're turning Snow White into this epic tale fighting back the resistance, fighting back the tyrant. And what are we doing with Snow White? You can kind of feel some of the reshoots and the reworking of the movie as it kind of feels like it's being pulled back and forth between different energies and vibes, and certain things that probably about the, true love's kiss bringing her back probably wasn't in the original version and suddenly shows up and characters disappear in the third act. It's a very, very odd film to watch because you just know that this is not the movie they originally set out to make. What that was that movie, I don't know, would have been better because they started on a very faulty foundation and delivered this kind of monstrosity of a thing with a bizarro performance from Gal Gadot. People, pick on Rachel Ziegler because has made these really ill-advised statements as a person, but she can sing and she can act, and she's right next to Gal, who has been in some movies where she did a good job. In this one, she feels like she's in a totally different movie from everybody else. It's just one more bizarro detail about this film. But finally, Lilo and Stitch. Cutting right to the chase on this one. It's good. I did not watch the original Lilo and Stitch when it came out. I didn't see it until I had kids, 15 years after the movie released. And so I have no nostalgia. You guys probably know the movie better than I do. So I just watched this one as a dad with my girls. They brought one of their friends along to go see it. And I found it to be a charming family film. Kind of classic formula. It's, Disney's version of E.T. with a lot of Hawaiian culture and Elvis and a little Men in Black. I'm down for all of that. A sci-fi adventure in live action works. E.T. in live action works. So it's the kind of one that makes sense in this format. Some of the changes that bothered other people, for me, just didn't. They either added a little bit more the complexity to something I think made for just a few more laughs in there. So, did I think it was great or mind-blowing? No, but it wasn't trying to be. One of my issues with Snow White is they tried to turn this simple fairy tale into this $250 million epic blockbuster that it was never meant to be. With Lilo and Stitch, the budget was $100 million. It was literally less than half of Snow White's budget. And it felt like that. Because it should. It is a sci-fi movie with aliens and some adventure and spaceships. But that's a small part of it. And it didn't try to convert the movie into an alien invasion movie. It just had fun. And it's small on this one island, little hijinks with Stitch tearing stuff up. We spent a lot of time at a house, a lot of time at the beach. Which is what it's supposed to be. Just a solid, smaller film. Kind of looping back to what we said at the beginning with Rudyard Kipling's The Jungle Book. Very different films on every regard, but movies that weren't trying to be the biggest film. They're just trying to make solid family entertainment. And that's what I think both of those movies did.
One.
There you have it. There's my final ranking. I know a lot of people hate a lot of these ones. For different reasons, we have nostalgia for different movies. For whatever reason, this is my ranking. Create your own. Share it on Instagram stories. Don't just DM it to me. Some people just DM me a picture. I don't know what you want me to do with that. Share it on Instagram stories and Twitter. I will reshare some of your rankings. The link's down below on that. Remember, I will be at Fan Expo Dallas this weekend. Love to meet you if you can make it out. Please come out to my panels. They're more fun when they're packed and full and I get to meet lots of people. There's just an energy in the room and I try to have at least a little bit of participation in there and keep talking movies and TV too.